Alright, we finally managed to win a tournament with Bloomlord. We've been playing Bloomlord for 3 sets now, and we've been so close. Some tops, some last place, some days when Bloomlord just like hates my fucking guts. But we finally did it with the addition of Quartzmon. This profile is going to be my first place winning deck at the recent Eagle's Nest online Digimon circuit. I will leave a link to their Discord group in the description below. Make sure you guys check it out if you like playing online tournaments. They're very, very nice. I've been made aware that this list is not exactly Alti Cup friendly because I got some spicy techs in there. It is super easy to take those out, and I'll explain how while we are going over the profile. But let's get started. We are going to start with our eggs. We're playing 5 eggs, 2 copies of Argo, 2 copies of Gummy, and 1 Bosamon. So Argo is just pretty obvious. Argo is one of the best green eggs that we have. When he comes unsuspended during unsuspend phase, gain a memory. Really great way to make sure that you're starting your turn with enough memory. Gummymon is a little more recent, but also very well used in green decks. We played Gummy in Shivamon when we started making recent updates. After EX2 came out, when an opponent's Digimon becomes suspended on your turn, draw a card. Just a good way to accelerate draws. And then Bosamon, the one of Bosa. This one is what gets everybody. I didn't see people playing the one of Bosa in this deck until I started doing it. Like a lot of people at my locals started playing the one of Bosa. So during your turn, when an effect suspends a Digimon, this Digimon gets plus 1k for the turn. Just a nice way to see if you can live in security, if you can swing over something. 1k buff isn't too much, that's why I only play the 1. And honestly, could you replace it with another Argo or even another Gummy? Yeah, but I like the diversity that this has brought to the egg base of this deck. So this is my preference. Feel free to do whatever you want with it. The eggs in this deck, I feel, are relatively flexible. You can probably get away with like 4 Argo, 1 Gummy. You can even flip it. Have fun with it, but Bosamon has been pretty interesting. Moving on to the level 3s. We're playing 4 copies of BT10 Palmon. If not the best rookie that we have in this list. On play, reveal the top 4 cards of your deck, add a card with vegetation or plant in its traits, and add 1 card with fairy in its traits, and put the rest to the bottom. So this lets you search for a vegetation or plant, and then it will also allow you to get a Bloomlord if you find it. Because if I'm not mistaken, Bloomlord is the only fairy in the deck. But it's just a really great way to put all the stuff that you need into your hand. Really quick way to find the level 4 or 5 you may be missing. A very, very valuable resource. Most of the time, if this is the only rookie in my opening hand, I'll just slam it. I think that you just ultimately get a little bit more value doing that. After that, we are playing 3 copies of Mushroommon. He's a vanilla rookie. He just drops for 2, and I think that he's been very helpful in helping me choke to 1. He's also just a cheap body if I ever need a cheap body. Yeah, he's just good to have at 3. I was originally running 4, but I think I cut it for some more valuable stuff. We are playing 3 copies of EX3 Palmumon. This is the one during your turn when an effect suspends this Digimon, you suspend one of your opponent's Digimon. You can absolutely run this at 4, depending on how much you find yourself needing it. I find it and utilize it a very good amount at 3. This is what I like. It allows me to swing over stuff if we're using it to combo into Bloomlord. Just a really nice thing to see, but nothing super duper fancy. Moving on, we are playing 2 copies of BT9 Palmumon. All turns players can't play Digimon by effects. So the reason I have this at 2 is it's not super duper relevant in the format right now. And it also messes you up if you're not careful. If you have this out and you try to Sunflow or Agitar, you cannot do that with this in play because it is players. It is not just the opponent. So make sure that you're careful, but this can definitely help slow down some decks. I like to use this right now against Beelzemon. It stops the EX2 Beelzemons from triggering. When trashed on the top of the deck, it stops Balmon from triggering. It's a good card to have. Just make sure that you're careful. And the last 2 rookies we're running are 2 copies of Terrier, just because Terrier is always good. I'm finding myself running or needing this guy significantly less as of recent. But depending on what you see, like obviously it's very good in Beelzemon, against Beelzemon. But it's very easy for Beelzemon to just kill this before it matters. Pick your battles, but this is definitely a good thing to know that you have. So that is 14 rookies to the level 4s. We are playing 4 copies of Sunflow, arguably the best level 4 in the deck. When Digivolving, by suspending one of your green Digimon, you can play a Digimon with Vegetation Planter Fairy and 3000 DP or less from hand without paying its cost. Good way to make sure you're dropping bodies. You can combo this with Palmon, because its on play will still trigger. You can even play a lot of your other level 4s, because a lot of them are going to end up being 3k or less. It's a great way to accelerate bodies, widen your board, because that's how Bloomlord works. You just want to get a super wide board, see if you can suspend everything. You'll be getting a lot more checks that way. So Sunflow is very important to find. It's inherited effect. When an effect suspends one of your Digimon, draw a card. Another great way to get more cards into your hand and find the pieces you need. Next, 4 copies of Red Vegemon. Just a vanilla level 4. He evolves for 1. It is very important in this deck, I've found, to make sure that you have enough level 4s that evolve for 1, just because I find myself being a little short on memory sometimes. Just make sure that you have these guys. They can also be played by the effect of Sunflow, as well as other cards in your deck that allow you to do this effect. So it's good to have some of those. After that, we are playing 2 copies of Weedmon. Weedmon was a little more important when I was still running a copy of Nidhogg in this deck. I'm not doing that anymore. He's just another vanilla level 4 that evolves for 1. And is yet another target of the Sunflow effect. So I think he's fine at 2. Just making sure you have cheap bodies to go into for the level 4s is pretty important, but Sunflow is the main one we want to see. The last one we're running 1 copy of BT1 Togemon. So when Digivolving, reveal 3 cards from top of your deck, add a level 5 or higher Digimon card among them to your hand. Just another search, basically. And it's also a level 4, so we're moving up at the rate we want to be moving up, as well as grabbing anything that we may be missing, if we're missing a 5 or a 6 or even a 7 now at this point. I think the 1-up is fine. I don't end up using him a whole lot. You can replace him if you want. But I think that he works perfectly fine. So that is 11 level 4s. Moving on to 5s. We are playing 3 copies of Agitar. Let me get through the rest of the level 5s before I explain some stuff. So we're playing 3 copies only of Agitar. Arguably the best level 5 in the deck, again. Main phase once per turn. By suspending one of your green Digimon, you can play a Digimon with Vegetation Planter Fairy. That's 3000 DP or less. It's the same effect as Sunflow, except it can do it during the main phase and not just when Digivolving. It's inherited effect. When the effect suspends one of your Digimon, gain a memory. That is going to help us out significantly going into Bloomlord to almost guarantee that it stays our turn when we do that. Very helpful to have this guy. Next, our main Zorper is 3 copies of Blossom. Just really, really easy to suspend something, go into the level 5 for free. It's a win-win. We want a cheap body to go into. We want to be suspended. Zorpers are always the best way to do that in green. Blossom is just like the staple. I would definitely run no less than 3. Now for the spice. And let me finish first. So we're playing 2 copies of Chimera. This is another thing that I wasn't seeing a whole lot of people doing until I started doing it a lot more. I am by no means claiming that I started the trend of Bosamon or Chimera. Of all the adjustments I've made over the last few sets, this is the one that has stayed the same. 2 copies of Chimera has come in clutch so many times. It's disgusting how often I'm able to Chimera for game. I highly recommend that you try this out. So this is the card that is not legal for Ulti-Cup, because it has to be a monocolored deck. So in that case, if you want to replace these for Ulti-Cup, run another Blossom and run another Agitar. That is definitely the way to go, in my opinion. Except for maybe this next one. We're playing 1 copy of Cherry. You could also run another copy of Cherry. With the addition of Quartzmon, Cherry is really, really good. So you can just keep Cherry on the field pretty much at all times. The way I do it is I try to leave him unsuspended, so if the opponent manages to bring anything into play, it can't swing over Cherry. So with Quartzmon in play, you can just use Cherrymon's ability to redirect attacks once per turn. And you'll just want to redirect into Quartzmon, so most of the time it'll just die with little to no repercussion on your end. So this is borderline better than a blocker, especially with the addition of Quartzmon. Because if you block, then you won't unsuspend again. But with Cherrymon, you can like always do this. Surprisingly enough, the deck runs no blockers. This is the closest thing we have to a blocker. He costs 3 to go into. He did use Zorps for 2, so if you Zorp, he'll cost 1. Like I said, when the opponent's Digimon attacks during the opponent's turn once per turn, you can switch the target of an attack to one of your suspended Digimon. Super gross card. Again, if you're looking to replace Chimera to make this Ulti-Cup legal, you can play another one of any of these, you know? And then our last card is obviously the level 5 Argo. Limited for a reason, super good. Discovered today, really good with Quartzmon, surprisingly. He makes sure that you have enough bodies to trigger all of Quartzmon's effects. To make sure that you're actually trashing cards from top of opponent's security. Good card to have. I haven't seen a lot of green lists that aren't playing this. It's limited for a reason. That's what I always say. And I say the same thing about HPD. Play them. So, that is 10 level 5s. Moving on to the 6s. A very obvious 4 copies of Bloomlord. It has to be 4. It should not be less than 4, trust me. When I find this guy, I typically find a lot more than 1. And that actually synergizes really well because you can, like, there was one round today, I went into 3 Bloomlord in 1 turn without passing. It gets gross quick if you're piling in enough bodies. So we all know what Bloomlord does when Digivolving. You may suspend one of your Digimon, then you'll gain 1 memory for each suspended Digimon with Vegetation Plant or Fairy that you have in play, and if you gain 2 or more memory by this effect, Bloomlord will unsuspend and gain Piercing for the turn. And then during your turn, for every 2 suspended Digimon you have, this Digimon gets plus 2000 DP and Security Attack plus 1. It adds up quick. And he gets really gross really fast. He's the star of the show. Please play for Bloomlord, for sure. Next, we are playing 1 copy of Hydra. Just found out that Hydra is limited in the Ulti-Cup since he's restricted. Luckily, I cut to 1 today. So, I think Hydra at 1 is actually fine. Like, yeah, he's sick, but your main goal is Bloomlord, and I think Quartz can make up for whatever Hydramon isn't able to finish. So when Digivolving, you may suspend one of your or your opponent's Digimon. All turns once per turn. When the opponent's Digimon becomes suspended, for each other suspended Digimon with Vegetation, Planter, Fairy, and traits that you have in play, gain 1 memory. End of your turn once per turn. If you have 2 or more suspended Digimon, Vegetation, Planter, Fairy, place one of your opponent's suspended Digimon at the bottom of its owner's deck. It's like Nidhogg, but it just keeps on happening. Highly recommend that you play this card at least one. Obviously for Ultimate Cup it's restricted, so you will only play one, but have it in the deck. It's still a valuable resource to have, depending on the matchup. That's it for 5 level 6s. Beyond that, the last Digimon in the deck is 2 copies of Quartzmon. Would love to run him at 3. I think 2 is perfectly fine. When Digivolving, suspend all other Digimon and Tamers. Then for every 2 suspended Digimon or Tamers, gain 1 memory. So you can go into him potentially, you know, for 4, 3, something like that. I have yet to go into him for cheaper than 4, but he's so worth it every single time. All turns other than this Digimon, all Digimon and Tamers don't unsuspend. So he will be the only thing that is ever unsuspending. Ever. Obviously, opponents can bring in new stuff, and it won't be suspended until they do it themselves. Or, you know, we have ways to do that too. But once something becomes suspended, if it's not this Quartzmon, it will stay suspended. When attacking, suspend one of your opponent's Digimon or Tamers. Then trash the top card of security for every 5 suspended Digimon or Tamer. So for every 5 things that are suspended, we'll trash the top of security. Today I didn't find that ever being more than trashing the top, because there just wasn't that many things in play when I went into Quartzmon, but it's still like a really devastating card. My opponent was playing Crossheart went for like 4 turns with being able to do almost nothing. Really slows decks down, really helps you take the advantage. I highly recommend that you are playing minimum 2. It is what makes this deck that much sicker. I wasn't winning very much before Quartzmon came along, and now it feels really, really good. So Quartzmon is a very welcome addition to this deck. Moving on to non-Digimon. We'll start with Tamers. It's 2 copies of Mimi. I think 2 is fine. I'm typically a 3 Mimi person, but I think 2 works perfectly fine. They synergize with each other if you manage to get both. I find myself not always going out of my way to drop Mimi during the round unless I get given enough memory, but she's always great to have for some shenanigans. Obviously, she's the best green tamer in the game. She's a memory setter. If you have a level 5 or higher, you can suspend her to either hatch an egg or raise a level 3 or higher. Definitely a great way to make sure that you have like a body for game if you're emptying the stack that turn. And obviously starting at 3 memory is always very, very good. Moving on to option cards. We are playing 2 copies of Green Memory Boost. Just a good way to dig, just a good way to make sure you have a little extra memory. Reveal the top 4, add a Green Digimon card, bottom the rest. You can search for Quartzmon. Quartzmon with this. So Quartzmon doesn't always synergize with the deck because he is an unknown. He is not a Vegetation, Planter, Fairy. So you can't search with him with like Palmon's effect. But you can definitely search for him with Green Mem Boost because he is green. So make sure that you're getting him if you need him. I like Green Mem Boost for that. And, you know, a little extra memory never killed anyone. So I think 2 copies of Green Mem Boost is fine. After that, we are playing 2 copies of Samadhi Santi. I think that these come in clutch more often than you would think. I think 2 is fine. It allows you to make sure that something of yours is suspended, or it'll buy you a turn suspending something of your opponent's. You may suspend one of your Digimon to suspend one of your opponent's Digimon or Tamers. They don't suspend until the end of their next turn. And then really good hitting it in security. That's another reason I like to hold on to these. If you hit it in security, it really slows them down because it suspends one of the opponent's Digimon or Tamers. I've been finding myself suspending a lot more Tamers with this effect, because in the format there's a lot of really important Tamers going around. And if they can't suspend, the opponent can't do much. So I think 2 copies of this is perfectly fine. Call it a tech if you want, but it's definitely worth it. The next 2 cards is an obvious copy of Hidden Potential Discovered, just so we can go into shit for free. Next time when your Digimon Digivolves, you may suspend one of your Digimon to reduce the cost by 5. This last game, we used it. We Jawgressed into Chimera. Chimera is technically green because it has green in its sources. We suspend it, go into Hydra for free, Hydra into Quartz, and then from Quartzmon we just had the game. Obviously it's limited for a reason. I always say that. It's limited for a reason. Play it. I can't think of a single instance where you wouldn't want to play this card in a green deck. Just do it. I highly recommend it. And then the last card in the deck is a copy of Grandel Soul. Grandel Soul is basically Nidhogg in option form. Or also kind of like Hydra in option form. When you use this card, if you have 2 or more suspended Digimon, reduce the play by 2, so it'll cost 6 instead of 8. Suspend one of your opponent's Digimon, then return one of your opponent's suspended Digimon to the bottom of the deck. And the security effect is to activate the main effect. So it's a great way to just bottom deck something annoying. Very, very, very good. I think at 1, I'm actually encountering this quite a bit. I don't think it needs to go higher than 1. And you have to think about how much value you're really getting out of using this in certain times. There are other times where, you know, you can probably just put all your memory or effort into building up a Bloomlord stack. Just swing over something. But I think that this card is another one that comes in clutch most of the time. And boys, that is the profile. That is our Quartz Bloomlord deck. That is our first place winning deck list. So glad that my Bloomlord list is finally taking dubs. It has been so many nights of just loathing and hatred of this deck because it just never worked out, and I feel like the deck hated me. And then we gave it 2 copies of Quartzmon, and suddenly we're best friends. I'll take it. The deck feels really, really comfortable right now, and I'm excited to keep playing more of it in the future. But that's it for the profile. Make sure you guys are checking the description below to join my Discord, join the Eagles Nest Discord if you guys are interested in joining their tournaments. Really great tournament organizers. Thank you guys for watching, and that's it. We'll see you next time.